Yeah, because the state is collapsing. So, I mean, a lot of people are talking about a potential civil war. But I mean, in South Africa, who's going to fight that civil war? There's no one to fight it. I mean, in the United States, obviously, they've got one of the most efficient and the best armies in the world. In South Africa, we clearly see that's not the case. So we're in a better position to move on, whereas in other countries, first world countries, there's the real potential of civil war. But if I understand you correctly, to put it in absolute terms, it's basically the people that want to burn everything down against people that want to maintain what has been a West sort of a structure, principles. That's an absolute way of putting it. Just for our viewers to get a real sense of it, that's absolute.
This is precisely what is playing out in the streets. I mean, the burning down is burning down and is damaging of property, killing of people, and so on and so forth, which is in the first and final instance directed against the main enemy, which is Western civilization, to the extent that it's still in existence in the US. And the opposite of that is that you see many academics, you see many politicians, you see many opinion makers and so on in the United States on the conservative side, which are not actually only on the conservative side. I say they are on the civilizational side. They are actually realizing that what is at stake here is something which is not only a question of ideology. It is not only a question of freedom of speech. It is a question of, as Huntington would have said, who are we? Are we still Western civilization? So they are now fighting a civilizational battle. That's why the struggle is so acrimonious.
And a perfect example would probably be the French Revolution. If people think by burning things down, that necessarily helps you. I mean, Robespierre hanged everyone or guillotined everyone, and then at the end of the day, he was guillotined. So
it's interesting you bring up the question of the French Revolution. If one wants to go to the roots of the struggle against Western civilization, then one must actually go back to the French Revolution, because that was really the beginning. One must realize that one of the things that the revolutionaries in France did was to establish a new calendar. The world, it was the new year zero, and then the first year and the second year. So the Christian calendar has been removed, and the whole idea that represents, in a nutshell, that represents the animosity against Western civilization. If you really want to remove Western civilization and put something in its place, well, then you must go back to the cradle of Western civilization. And the cradle of Western civilization is threefold. It's Jerusalem, Athens, and Rome. And with regard to specific cultures within Western civilization, because civilization is a broad thing, and you have cultures or subcultures within a civilization. France, the French people, used to be part of Western civilization. As a matter of fact, for a very, very long time, for hundreds of years, Paris actually was the capital of Western civilization. So the idea of the French Revolution was to rid themselves of Western civilization. That was the main aim. That was actually the main aim. So the whole leftist movement that we have experienced since the year, essentially since 1789, and after that through Marxism, new Marxism, and so on, currently in vogue, is nothing but still the same process which is going on. Namely the struggle against Western civilization. I think it's very important actually to understand that we're not only here dealing with, I can almost say, a superficial fight regarding ideology. It is really the most, on the most deepest level that this political struggle is playing out. It's on the civilizational level.
And I mean, you
I
see
can
it,
even
and like what happened in the United States recently, where I mean, there's not a lot of ideology involved in opposition to, for example, police in the United States. I mean, you just saw people running around burning things down. There's not they're not offering um, something to replace it in a real structural sense. They're just burning everything down. I mean, you're seeing that really happening.
Yes, just it's good that you referred to that. If one just want to come back to South Africa for a moment, you actually see the very same things playing out in South Africa, namely with the so-called decolonization process, the decolonization outcry. For example, the outcry for the decolonization of the university and school curriculum, and for the Africanization of the curriculum. I don't know precisely what one is going to study if once the curriculum is Africanized. But the main thing is that clearly shows, that's evidence of the very acrimonious animosity against the West. I mean, if you study history, if you study philosophy, if you study sociology, if you study, well, also the natural sciences, you study things that actually come from the West. If you want to, if your aim is to decolonize the curriculum in the sense that you must get out of the way everything that emanates from the West, then in a final analysis you have to get rid of, well, all learnedness. But this is precisely what you see, for example, at the University of Cape Town, at the University of Pretoria, at WITS, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we thought that's an interesting thing. That also goes back to the article that we start speaking about right at the beginning. We thought that there was a process of decolonization that has taken place in Africa, beginning in 1957 with the independence of Ghana, and thereafter for the next 10, 12, 15 years, the process of decolonization. And then also in the final analysis, the decolonization of the colonizers of a specific kind, namely the whites in South Africa. The ANC refers to the whites in South Africa as colonizers of a specific kind. Why? Well, we didn't go back to our motherlands, our mother countries, because we don't have that anymore. South Africa is our fatherland. South Africa is our motherland. So in other words, the colonizers stayed here. That's why they referred to it as colonization of a specific kind. But the point is, the ANC and the leftist movement in the Western world were not content only with political decolonization. They also want a full-fledged cultural decolonization to play out. So everything which represents, everything which is indicative of, everything which has in it traces of Western civilization we must rid ourselves of that, and only once that has happened will decolonization have run its full course. This is what we're seeing here.
And what do you see as the best response to all of this? Because I love your use of the word civilization, because if you use Western, people are like, oh, you're referring, oh, only white people can do anything. That's sort of the argument they throw up. But if you use civilization versus whatever they're standing for, I mean, that's much more basic and something I think everyone can get around. So what do you see as a response to all of this?
That's a big question. But I've given it a lot of thought, fortunately, and I've read a tremendous amount about it. If I look in that direction, I look at various books dealing with the question of civilization. That's now the direction in my study here. Of, for example, a number of books that relate to the question of civilization. Fernand Braudel, a study of history of, for a moment I forgot his name, 12 volumes, and various others. There are various ways, just to give a little background, there are various ways upon which one can look on history. You can say there's just a general history taking its course, a general history of humankind. An example of that is the history written by Harari, the Israeli historian. That's a general human history. Book was published 4, 5 years ago. And that's one way to look upon history. Or you can look at history as the history of states or the history of nations. That is, in a sense, a short-term form of history, because states are very, very often just quite fleeting. They come and they go quite quickly. Or you can look at the history of nations. Now, nations normally have a longer time span. If you refer to the German nation, it has a time span of 1,000 years or more. If you refer to the Afrikaner nation, well, how old is the Afrikaner nation? 150 years? How long will it still exist? I hope for many, many years, many, many decades and centuries to come. But the fact of the matter is nations come and go. But when you look at civilizations, you're looking at something which is, in a sense, much more permanent. Historians writing on the question of civilizations, such as, that's the name I forgot a while ago to my own shame, Arnold Toynbee, said, well, a civilization can exist for 1,000 years, 1,500 years, 2,000 years. And the point is, it is really important actually to look upon humankind, not only as humankind in general, or not only as humankind divided into states or into nations, but more prominently, more specifically divided into civilizations. Okay? Now, Western civilization has particular roots. It goes back, as I've said, to the three cities: Jerusalem, Athens, and Rome. That's the roots of Western civilization. But Western civilizations finally only come to fruition, say, around about the year 1000. Okay, that's when the kind of an that's when the three roots came together in kind of a synthesis. Okay, and the first big, and many people will be shocked if they hear me saying so, but I'm in very good company actually when I say so. One of the first signals, one of the first signs of real potency of Western civilization was the Crusades. Okay, because it was all people coming together, many people coming together all through Western Europe, going to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem. Okay, so it was not only a nation, but it was a civilizational thing. Now, obviously, it need not be that warlike, but because it was a holy war. That is precisely what it was. So, but Western civilization is obviously still in existence. But Western civilization is under a tremendous amount of pressure. But let me just move one back. If one looks at Sino-civilization, Chinese civilization, it has gone through a variety of royal houses. But in a sense, you can say that Chinese civilization is 3,500 years old. It's not only a nation. It's not only a people. It's not only one language. It's really a civilization in terms of time span and in terms of the fact that it actually overspan a number of languages, a number of cultures, and the number of historical phases. And the same applies to Islam as a civilization. There are many Islamist nations, or Islam nations, if you want to put it that way. But actually, Islam overspans a large number of peoples, various continents, North America, even certain parts of Southern Europe, and then obviously Arabia, and many parts of Asia, and many parts of Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. How old is it? 1,500 years old. Okay, so the real organisms almost, and many historians speak of civilizations as if they are organisms. Okay, that's the organism, the human organism, so to say, with the longest time span. Now, so I think the important thing is also to view ourselves not only as people who subscribe to a particular ideology, not only as people who see ourselves as, to me personally, it's important, as speaking a particular language as your mother tongue, being part of a particular nation or folk, as we say in Afrikaans and in German and in Dutch and so on, but broadly to view all Western nations as belonging to, as sharing a civilization. It's only once one realizes that you actually realize that the kind of pressures that call it for the moment conservative people, and by conservative I do not mean verkramp, that conservative people in the United States are confronted with, and that people are confronted with similarly in Western Europe and in Hungary and in South Africa and so on and so forth, is the same problem. It's the same problem. Because we're dealing and we are confronted with the civilizational crisis. Yes, it's the problem of Western people, Westerners in South Africa, of Afrikaner people in South Africa, of white people in South Africa. And the point that you've made, very important, it's not a race thing. And of the other people in South Africa, regardless of race, who are subscribing and who are living in accordance with Western civilization, all of them. But the point is that we share, regardless of the continents in which we are finding ourselves or the countries in which we are finding ourselves, we are confronted with the same kind of problem. It's the massive assault on Western civilization. Okay, it's a long story. How does one respond to that? I think, in a nutshell, two answers. First thing, one must just realize the nature of the struggle, because it is a struggle. One must realize what's the nature of the struggle. It's not only a question of ideology. It's not only a question of nation and state. Yes, that too. But in the final analysis, going to the root of it, it's a civilizational question.